The morning sun over Seoul disappeared behind a massive shadow that stretched across the entire city. Kim Tae-ho was drinking his coffee in the United Earth Defense Council building when the alarm started screaming. People on the streets below stopped walking and looked up at the sky with their mouths open. The alien ship was enormous. It was bigger than any building in Seoul, and it floated in the air without making any sound. The metal hull was dark and smooth, but it had strange patterns that seemed to move when you looked at them for too long. Children started crying and adults pulled out their phones to record what they were seeing. Admiral Kim Tae-ho put down his coffee cup and walked to the window. His heart was beating fast, but his face stayed calm. He had been preparing for this moment his whole military career. First contact with aliens was supposed to be a peaceful meeting between civilizations, but this ship did not look peaceful. Commander Park Minji ran into the admiral's office without knocking. Her uniform was wrinkled and her hair was messy. She had been working in the communication center all night trying to figure out what the alien ship wanted. Admiral Kim, the ship has been there for 3 hours now, but they have not tried to communicate with us. Our satellites show similar ships over New York, London, Moscow, and Tokyo. They're just sitting there waiting for something. Admiral Kim nodded slowly and walked back to his desk. He pressed a button that connected him to defense leaders around the world. The holographic display showed worried faces from every major military base on Earth. This is Admiral Kim speaking to all stations. The aliens have positioned their ships over our major cities, but they have not attacked yet. We need to stay calm and wait for them to make the first move. Do not fire unless they fire first. Captain Lee Jin-ho was only 28 years old, but he was already known as the smartest military strategist in the Korean defense force. He had studied every war in human history and could predict enemy movements better than computers that cost millions of dollars. Captain Lee was in the strategy room looking at displays that showed the alien ships from every angle. The ships were identical in every way, which meant they were built by a civilization that valued order and control. The positioning over major cities was clearly meant to intimidate the human population. Dr. Han Sora was in the science division trying to scan the alien ships with every instrument they had. Her team had been working since the ships first appeared, but the alien technology was unlike anything they had ever seen. The ships seemed to absorb most scanning attempts and reflected others back. 3 days passed with no communication from the aliens. The ships just floated there like giant storm clouds that never moved. People stopped going to work and stayed home with their families. The stock markets crashed and governments around the world declared martial law. Then on the 4th day, the aliens finally spoke. A beam of light shot down from the ship over Seoul and formed a circle on the roof of the Defense Council building. The light was bright blue and it hummed with energy that made everyone's teeth ache. 3 figures materialized in the light, and they were not what anyone expected. The aliens were tall and thin with skin that looked like gray metal. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their heads were longer than human heads. Each alien had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, and when they blinked, it happened 1 eye at a time. The leader of the aliens stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, mixed with electronic noise, but somehow everyone could understand what he was saying, as if the words were being placed directly into their minds. I am Overlord Vexton of the Valdari Collective. We represent the hegemony of 12 worlds. Your species has violated our laws by expanding beyond your birth. System Admiral Kim walked onto the roof with Commander Park and Captain Lee behind him. They tried to look confident, but the aliens were much taller than humans, and their 6 eyes made it impossible to tell where they were looking. Dr. Han followed behind them, carrying a recording device and a scanner. She wanted to learn as much as possible about these aliens, but she was also afraid of what they might do if they felt threatened. What laws are you talking about? Admiral Kim asked. We have never met your people before today. We did not know about any laws. Overlord Vexton tilted his head, and all 6 of his eyes focused on the admiral. The other 2 aliens moved to stand on either side of him, and their hands moved to weapons that were attached to their bodies. Ignorance is not an excuse. Your species has established colonies on 17 worlds outside your home system. This violates Hegemony Protocol 7.3, which states that primitive species must remain in their birth systems until they prove they are ready for galactic civilization. Captain Lee felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. He had studied the human colonies and knew that every one of them was built on empty worlds where no other intelligent life existed. The aliens were talking about laws that humans had never agreed to follow. How do we prove we are ready? Admiral Kim asked. Overlord Vexton made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not a pleasant sound. You do not prove anything. You submit to Valdari oversight and accept our guidance. Your expansion ends now. Your colonies will be abandoned, and your species will return to this single world commander. Park stepped forward with her hand near her weapon, but Admiral Kim held up his hand to stop her. The aliens noticed the movement, and their own weapons started glowing with red light. If we refuse, Admiral Kim asked, then you will be eliminated. Overlord Vexton said as if he was talking about the weather, we have done this 47 times before. Your species is not special. You are not unique. You are simply another group of primitives who thought they could challenge the natural order. The alien leader waved one of his 4 hands, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed Earth surrounded by red dots that pulsed with threatening light. These are weapon platforms. We positioned them around your world while you were sleeping. Each one can destroy a continent, your cities, your people, your entire civilization can be erased in moments. Dr. Han was recording everything, but her hands were shaking. The aliens were not here to make friends or trade technology. They were here to give humanity a choice between slavery and death. You have 72 of your planetary rotations to make your decision. Overlord Vexton continued. Withdraw from all colony worlds. Submit to Valdari oversight. Accept our guidance in all matters or face complete elimination. The holographic display changed to show other worlds that were covered in black ash and twisted metal. These were the civilizations that had chosen to fight the Valdari Empire and lost. Admiral Kim looked at the destroyed worlds and then back at the alien leader. His voice was steady when he spoke. We will need time to discuss this among our people, Overlord. Vexton made that unpleasant laughing sound again. Of course you will need time. All primitives need time to accept the inevitable, but do not take too long. The hegemony does not wait forever. The 3 aliens began to fade as the blue light surrounded them again. But before they disappeared completely, Overlord Vexton spoke one more time. We will establish a monitoring station in your capital city. Do not try to interfere with our operations. Do not try to attack our personnel. Do not try to run away. The galaxy is large, but it is not large enough to hide from the Valdaraith. Aliens vanished, and the blue light disappeared, leaving only the smell of ozone and the sound of Admiral Kim's heart beating in his chest. Captain Lee was the first to speak. Admiral, we cannot surrender to these aliens. If we give up our colonies, we give up our future. As a species, Dr. Han nodded in agreement. The way they talked about other civilizations, they do not just want submission. They want to keep us as pets or slaves. Commander Park was already thinking about military options. We need to analyze their technology, find their weaknesses, and prepare for a war. Admiral Kim looked out at the city below where millions of people were going about their lives, not knowing that their entire civilization hung in the balance. The aliens think we are just another primitive species, he said quietly. They think we will react like all the others they have conquered. But humans are different, Captain Lee said. We do not surrender easily, Admiral. Kim smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. No, we do not, and that is going to be their biggest mistake. The emergency meeting in the United Earth Defense Council lasted 18 hours without a break. Leaders from every country sat around the massive circular table while holographic displays showed the alien ships still floating over major cities. The air was thick with tension and the smell of too much coffee. Admiral Kim Taiho had been promoted to Supreme Commander of all Earth forces in a vote that took less than 5 minutes. Every world leader agreed that humanity needed unified leadership. To face the alien threat, Commander Park Minji became his second in command, while Captain Lee Junho was put in charge of military strategy. Dr. Han Sora found herself leading a new department called Xenobiology Warfare Division. Her job was to study the aliens and find ways to fight them using science instead of just weapons. She had a team of the smartest scientists from every country working under her. The alien monitoring station appeared overnight in the center of Seoul. It was a black pyramid that rose 200 meters into the sky and hummed with energy that made electronics malfunction within a kilometer. The Valdari had built it without asking permission, and humans were not allowed to go near it inside the pyramid. Overlord Vexton and 12 other Valdari officials monitored human activities. They watched news broadcasts, listened to government communications, and scanned military installations. Their technology was so advanced that they could read human thoughts from a distance, but the aliens made their first mistake by underestimating human creativity. Captain Lee spent the first week after the alien ultimatum traveling to secret military bases around the world. He met with generals and strategists who had been preparing for alien invasion scenarios for decades. They had weapons and plans that were hidden from public view. The humans had learned from every science fiction movie and book ever made. They knew that aliens would expect them to fight with conventional weapons and surrender when those weapons failed. But humans had been thinking about alien invasion for over a century. Dr. Han discovered something important when she analyzed the alien technology samples that were left behind after the first contact. Meeting the Valdari used biological integration in all their devices. Their brains were connected to their machines through organic neural networks. This gave Dr. Han an idea that would change everything. She began working on what she called Project Prometheus, a biological weapon that would target the alien neural networks without harming humans. It was not designed to kill the aliens quickly, but to disrupt their biological systems in a way that would make them vulnerable. Commander Park organized special forces teams from every military unit on Earth. These soldiers were trained in techniques that had never been used before. They learned to fight without using any electronic devices that the aliens could detect. They practiced moving silently and striking without warning. The Valdari monitoring station became the focus of human planning. The aliens inside believed they were safe because their technology was superior to anything humans possessed. They did not realize that humans were preparing to use their own biological advantages against them. Admiral Kim coordinated the global response while maintaining the appearance of normal diplomatic discussions. He met with world leaders who pretended to argue about whether to accept the alien ultimatum. Meanwhile, secret preparations continued in underground facilities. The aliens had given humanity 72 days to decide. 3 weeks passed while the humans appeared to be struggling with their decision. The Valdari watched human news broadcasts that showed protests and government debates about surrender. They believed everything was going according to plan. Dr. Han made her breakthrough on the 23rd day. She created a pathogen that could spread through biological networks like a computer virus, but it would not kill the aliens immediately. Instead, it would cause confusion, disorientation, and eventually system failure. The pathogen was designed to be completely invisible to alien detection systems. It mimicked natural biological processes while carrying a deadly payload that would activate only when it reached alien neural tissue. The most brilliant part was that it would spread through their own communication networks. Captain Lee identified the perfect time to strike. The aliens had requested a formal meeting where human leaders would announce their decision to surrender. It would be held inside the monitoring station where all the high-ranking Valdari officials would be present. Commander Park positioned her teams around the alien facility over several days. Her soldiers looked like maintenance workers, construction crews, and delivery personnel. The aliens saw them but did not consider them threats because they carried no visible weapons. The biological weapon was prepared in a form that looked like a standard diplomatic gift. Dr. Han had created small devices that would release the pathogen when activated. They were disguised as translation aids that would help humans communicate with the aliens. Admiral Kim selected the team that would enter the alien facility himself. He chose people who could remain calm under pressure and who understood that they might not survive the mission. Everyone who volunteered knew they were potentially sacrificing their lives for humanity. The meeting was scheduled for day 25 of the alien ultimatum. The humans requested permission to bring their own translation devices and recording equipment. The aliens agreed because they wanted to document humanity's surrender for their historical records. Dr. Han prepared the final version of the biological weapon. It was contained in devices that looked exactly like normal human technology but would release the pathogen when exposed to alien biological signatures. The weapon was undetectable by any known alien scanning method. Captain Lee studied the alien facility layouts that had been gathered by hidden surveillance. The monitoring station had multiple levels, with the main conference room located in the center. The aliens would be trapped inside their own fortress. When the attack began, Commander Park gave her final briefing to the strike teams. They would move simultaneously. When the pathogen was released, the aliens would be confused and disoriented, which would give the humans a tactical advantage. The mission was not just to kill the aliens, but to send a message. The night before the meeting, Admiral Kim stood on the roof of the Defense Council building, looking up at the alien ship that still floated over Seoul. He thought about all the civilizations that had surrendered to the Valdari Empire and decided that humanity would be different. Dr. Han made final adjustments to the biological weapon. She knew that once it was released, there would be no going back. The pathogen would spread through the alien networks, and every Valdari who encountered it would carry the memory of what humans were capable of doing. The morning of the meeting arrived with clear skies and no wind. The alien monitoring station hummed with energy as the Valdari prepared to receive humanity's surrender. They had no idea that instead of submission, they were about to witness the birth of humanity's reputation as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Admiral Kim put on his dress uniform and checked his equipment one final time. The translation device in his pocket contained enough biological weapon to kill every alien in the facility. He was about to start a war that would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The humans walked toward the alien facility carrying their surrender documents and their hidden weapons. They looked defeated and broken, exactly as the aliens expected, but inside each of them burned the determination that had carried humanity through countless wars and disasters. As they approached the Black Pyramid, Admiral Kim thought about the 47 civilizations that had been conquered by the Valdari Empire. Today, that number would stop growing because humanity was about to teach the galaxy that some species do not surrender. The alien guards opened the facility entrance and the humans stepped inside, carrying death disguised as diplomacy. The Valdari had made their final mistake by inviting their executioners into their own stronghold. The interior of the Valdari monitoring station was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The walls were covered with organic patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with alien energy. Dr. Han felt her skin crawl as she realized they were walking inside a living building. Overlord Vexthan stood in the center of the main chamber, surrounded by 12 other Valdari officials. Their 6 eyes tracked the human movements while their 4 arms gestured in what might have been alien sign language. The translation devices made their voices sound like metal grinding against stone. Admiral Kim carried a briefcase that contained what appeared to be Earth's formal surrender documents, but hidden beneath the papers was Dr. Han's biological weapon disguised as a ceremonial gift. The pathogen was stable and undetectable until it came into contact with alien neural tissue. Commander Park walked beside the Admiral, her military bearing perfect despite the sweat on her forehead. She had memorized every detail of the alien facility layout and knew exactly how her strike teams would move once the biological weapon was activated. Captain Lee followed behind them, carrying recording equipment that was actually a sophisticated scanning device. His job was to map the alien biological networks in real time, so they could track the pathogens spread through their systems. Dr. Han entered last, wearing a standard diplomatic uniform that concealed sensors designed to monitor alien biological functions. She needed to confirm that the pathogen was working before the strike teams moved into action. The Valdari arranged themselves in a semicircle around the humans, with Overlord Vexthan at the center. His voice carried the arrogance of a species that had conquered 47 other civilizations without ever facing real resistance. You have made the wise choice by accepting our guidance. Your species will benefit from Valdari oversight, and your expansion beyond this system will cease immediately. Admiral Kim stepped forward and placed the briefcase on the organic table that grew from the floor itself. The moment his hands touched the surface, the biological weapon began its work, spreading through the alien neural networks like invisible fire. The pathogen was designed to mimic natural biological processes while carrying a deadly payload that would cause increasing disorientation and system failure. It would not kill the aliens immediately, but would make them vulnerable to human attack as tradition requires. I present this gift to show our acceptance of your authority. Admiral Kim said as he opened the briefcase and removed what appeared to be a human cultural artifact. The device was actually a concentrated dose of the biological weapon designed to spread through the air and accelerate the pathogen's effects on alien neural tissue. Dr. Han had created it to look like a small sculpture that represented human submission overlord. Vexton reached out with one of his forearms to accept the gift the moment his skin touched the device. The pathogen began spreading through his biological systems at an accelerated rate. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as the weapon started. Disrupting his neural networks, the other Valdari officials moved closer to examine the human gift, which caused the pathogen to spread even faster through their shared biological connections. Within minutes, every alien in the chamber was infected with the weapon that would destroy their coordination. Dr. Han watched her sensors as the alien biological signatures began fluctuating wildly. The pathogen was exceeding her expectations and causing system failures throughout the facility. The aliens were becoming confused and disoriented exactly as planned. Captain Lee activated his scanning equipment and confirmed that the alien weapon systems were being affected by the biological weapon. Their integrated technology was failing as their neural networks became compromised. The first sign of the pathogen's success came when Overlord Vexton stumbled backward and his forearms began moving independently. His 6 eyes lost focus and he started speaking in his native language instead of using the translation device. Commander Park touched a hidden button on her uniform that sent a signal to the human strike teams positioned around the facility. The biological weapon had done its work and now it was time for the second phase of the operation. The alien guards at the facility entrance suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate their movements as the pathogen spread through their systems. They tried to activate their weapons, but their biological integration had been compromised. Captain Lee watched his scanners as the alien communication networks began failing throughout the facility. The pathogen was spreading faster than expected and causing complete system shutdown rather than just disorientation. Dr. Han saw that several Valdari officials were now unable to stand upright as their neural networks collapsed. The biological weapon had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness by attacking the systems that connected their minds to their technology. The human strike teams moved through the facility with surgical precision. They had studied alien anatomy for weeks and knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Their weapons were designed to work without electronics that the aliens could detect. Admiral Kim drew a simple knife from his belt and approached Overlord Vexton, who was now helpless as his biological systems failed. The alien leader tried to speak, but his translation device was no longer functioning properly. This is for the 47 civilizations you destroyed, Admiral Kim said as he began the work that would send a message to every alien species in the galaxy. Commander Park coordinated the simultaneous elimination of all 12 Valdari officials while her team secured the facility. The aliens were completely defenseless as their biological integration turned against them. The pathogen had done more than just disable the aliens. It had turned them into carriers that would spread the memory of this moment to every Valdari who came into contact with their biological networks. Dr. Han began the preservation process that would keep the alien neural tissue active even after death. The heads would continue to broadcast through the Valdari communication systems and carry the message of human capabilities to their entire empire. Captain Lee coordinated with the strike teams to ensure that every alien in the facility was eliminated while their technology remained intact for later study. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Within 6 hours, the Valdari monitoring station had fallen to human forces without a single casualty on the human side. The biological weapon had been so effective that the aliens never had a chance to fight back or call for help. Admiral Kim stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the bodies of the alien officials. Their 6 eyes were still open and their neural tissue remained active thanks to Dr. Han's preservation techniques. The real message was about to be sent to the Valdari fleet waiting in orbit above Earth. They would receive their diplomatic response in a way that would terrorize every alien species in the galaxy. Commander Park supervised the careful removal of the alien heads, which would be prepared for transport to the Valdari fleet. The humans were about to demonstrate that they understood exactly what kind of war the aliens had started. Dr. Han monitored the biological networks as the pathogen continued to spread through the alien systems. The weapon was designed to carry psychological trauma rather than just physical damage, and it was working perfectly. The facility was now under human control, and the aliens who had threatened to eliminate humanity were dead, but this was just the beginning of a message that would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Admiral Kim looked at the alien heads that would soon be delivered to their fleet and allowed himself a small smile. The Valdari had expected humanity to surrender like all the other species they had conquered. Instead, they had learned that humans were very different. The biological weapon had proven that alien technology could be turned against them, and the psychological impact of the preserved heads would spread terror throughout their empire. The galaxy was about to learn that threatening humanity was a fatal mistake. The cargo pod that launched from Earth looked like a standard diplomatic container, the kind that civilized species used to send formal communications across space. Fleet Commander Zephyros watched it approach his flagship through the massive viewing ports that lined the Valdari Command Center. 3 days had passed since the monitoring station had gone silent. The fleet commander assumed that the humans had finally accepted Valdari authority and were sending their formal surrender documents, along with tribute gifts as conquered species typically did. The cargo pod was brought into the main hangar bay, where Valdari technicians scanned it for weapons or dangerous materials. Their instruments detected nothing unusual, just organic matter and some basic human technology that posed no threat to advanced Valdari systems. Fleet commander Zephyros decided to open the container in the presence of his senior staff, as was traditional when receiving surrender documents from newly conquered species. The ceremony would be recorded and transmitted to the Valdari homeworld as proof of another successful campaign. The main command chamber was filled with over 50 Valdari officers who had gathered to witness the formal submission of the human species. Their 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as they prepared to add another victory to the hegemony empire. Dr. Han had designed the preservation system to maintain alien neural activity even after death. The heads of Overlord Vexton and his 12 officials were still conscious and aware of everything happening around them. Their biological networks remained active and connected when the cargo pod opened. Fleet Commander Zephyros expected to see documents or cultural artifacts that represented human submission. Instead, he found something that would haunt the Valdari species for generations to come. The heads were arranged in a precise pattern that had meaning in both human and Valdari cultures. It was a formation that said, "We have studied your people, we understand your weaknesses, and we are not afraid to use them against you." Each head still had its 6 eyes open and staring directly at whoever looked at them. The preservation process had kept their neural tissue functioning, which meant they could still receive and process information through their biological networks. Attached to each head was a small device that Admiral Kim had ordered his technicians to create using reverse-engineered alien technology. These devices projected holographic messages directly into the minds of any Valdari who came within range. The message began playing automatically as soon as Valdari officers approached the cargo pod. The voice was calm and professional but carried an undertone of absolute determination that made the aliens step backward in fear. "This is Admiral Kim Taiho, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, speaking to the Valdari fleet. The diplomats you sent to demand our surrender have been eliminated." As you can see, the holographic projection showed the faces of the human leaders who had planned and executed the attack on the monitoring station. Each one looked directly at the camera with the cold expression of people who had done what was necessary. Commander Park Minji appeared next, her voice carrying the precision of a military officer reporting mission success. "Your diplomatic mission failed to understand that humans do not surrender to threats. We respond to threats with overwhelming force." The message continued with Captain Lee Junho explaining exactly how the biological weapon had been designed and deployed. "We studied your technology, your weaknesses, and your biological integration systems. We found ways to turn your strengths against you." Dr. Hansora spoke last, her voice carrying the clinical detachment of a scientist describing a successful experiment. "Your species has conquered 47 others by exploiting their desire to survive. Humans are different, we would rather die fighting. Then, live as slaves, the preserved heads began to speak in unison, using their still-functioning neural networks to broadcast the message throughout the Vuldari biological communication system. Every word was transmitted to every alien who shared their network. We know you have weapon platforms around our world, but we also know that you need to get close enough to use them effectively. The moment you enter our weapons range, you will discover that we have been preparing for this war since your species first appeared. The message carried detailed information about human military capabilities that the aliens had never suspected. Earth had weapon systems that could challenge even advanced alien technology, and humans who were willing to use them without hesitation. Fleet Commander Zephyros felt something his species had never experienced before: genuine terror, as the psychological impact of the message spread through the biological networks that connected every Vuldari in the fleet. The heads continued broadcasting their message, explaining that the pathogen used to kill them was just one of many biological weapons that humans had developed specifically to target alien neural systems. The threat was clear and terrifying. Your biological integration makes you vulnerable to weapons that no other species would think to create. We have turned your greatest advantage into your greatest weakness, and we are prepared to use this knowledge against your entire empire. The holographic message showed images of the human strike teams moving through the Vuldari facility with surgical precision. It demonstrated that humans had studied alien anatomy and knew exactly how to kill them most effectively. We are sending you the heads of your diplomatic mission as proof that we understand the language of violence better than you do. This is what happens to those who threaten humanity. Your choice is simple: leave now or join them. The neural networks that connected the Vuldari were now infected with the psychological trauma of watching their own officials being systematically eliminated by a species they had considered primitive and helpless. Every Vuldari who connected to the biological communication system experienced the deaths of the diplomatic mission firsthand. The memory became part of their shared consciousness and would spread to every member of their species. The message concluded with a warning that would echo through alien civilizations for generations. We have more biological weapons, we have more ways to kill you, and we have humans who are eager to use them. Tell your empire that Earth is not another conquest fleet. Commander Zephyros ordered his communications officer to cut the transmission, but it was too late. The biological networks had already spread the message throughout the fleet, and it was being transmitted to Vuldari installations across the galaxy. The heads of the diplomatic mission continued to broadcast their warning, using their preserved neural tissue to carry the memory of human ruthlessness to every corner of the Vuldari Empire. They had become weapons of psychological warfare. Several Vuldari officers collapsed as the full impact of the message hit them through their biological connections. The shared trauma was spreading faster than any physical weapon could have, and causing panic throughout the fleet. The cargo pod also contained detailed technical specifications for the biological weapons that had been used against the diplomatic mission. The humans were not just threatening, they were proving that they had the knowledge and capability to follow through. Fleet Commander Zephyros realized that his species had made a catastrophic error in judgment. The humans were not another primitive civilization that could be easily conquered. They were a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The message had been designed to spread through the Vuldari biological networks like a virus, carrying psychological trauma and the memory of human capabilities to every alien who shared their communication systems. As the fleet commander watched his officers struggle with the terror that was spreading through their ranks, he understood that the humans had achieved something unprecedented. They had forced the most powerful empire in the galaxy to fear them. The heads of Overlord Vexen and his officials would continue broadcasting their message for years to come, serving as a permanent reminder that humanity was not prey but predator, and that threatening Earth was a fatal mistake. The news of what humans had done to the Vuldari diplomatic mission spread through the galaxy's communication networks faster than anyone had expected. Within hours, every major alien civilization knew that Earth had responded to the Empire's ultimatum by sending back the heads of their diplomats. Admiral Kim stood in the expanded command center of the United Earth Defense Council, watching displays that showed alien ship movements throughout the galaxy. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Several species that had been planning attacks on human colonies suddenly changed course. Captain Lee coordinated with intelligence services on every human world as reports came in about alien behavior. The psychological impact of the preserved heads was spreading through multiple species communication networks. Most aliens had never seen anything like the human response. Darhan monitored the biological weapon as it continued to spread through Valdari systems. The pathogen was not just killing individual aliens, it was carrying traumatic memories that infected entire populations with fear. The weapon had exceeded all expectations. Commander Park received reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy that alien ships were avoiding human space entirely. Species that had been aggressive toward human settlements were now maintaining safe distances and refusing to engage. The Valdari fleet above Earth was experiencing complete breakdown as the psychological trauma spread through their biological networks. Several ships had already begun moving away from the solar system as their crews became unable to function. Normally, Fleet Commander Zephyros made the decision that would define the next phase of galactic politics. He ordered the complete withdrawal of all Valgari forces from human space and issued a galaxy-wide warning that Earth was to be classified as a hazardous species. The classification meant that humans had achieved something no other species had ever accomplished. They had forced the most powerful empire in the galaxy to change their fundamental approach to conquest and expansion. Other members of the hegemony began questioning whether the Valdari were as invincible as they had claimed. Several species that had been conquered decades earlier started organizing resistance movements inspired by the human example. The preserved heads of the Valdari Diplomats continued broadcasting their message throughout the alien biological networks. The memory of human ruthlessness was spreading to species that had never even heard of Earth before. Admiral Kim received his first communication from an alien species that was not part of the Valdari Empire. The Korth Federation sent a message requesting a meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements against hegemony expansion. Captain Lee analyzed the intercepted alien communications and discovered that the galaxy was rapidly reorganizing itself around the new reality that humans could not be conquered through traditional means. The balance of power was shifting. Dr. Han began receiving requests from other alien species who wanted to learn about human biological warfare techniques. Several civilizations offered to share information about Valdari weaknesses in exchange for protection from human attack. The Valdari Empire itself was struggling with internal conflicts as conquered species began rebelling against their authority. The psychological trauma from the biological weapon was affecting Valdari ability to maintain control over their territories. Commander Park established the Rapid Response Force, specialized units that could deploy to any threatened human colony within days. The mere existence of these forces was enough to deter most potential attacks. The heads of Overlord Vexton and his mission were put on permanent display in a special facility that alien diplomats were required to visit before any negotiations with Earth. The message was clear and unmistakable. Fleet Commander Zephyros filed his final report on what the Valdari now called the human incident. He concluded that humanity represented a completely new type of threat that combined advanced technology with primitive ruthlessness. The report recommended that all Valdari forces maintain a minimum distance of 10 light-years from any human settlement and that no diplomatic contact be attempted without approval from the highest levels of the Empire. Other alien civilizations began studying the human response to learn how a supposedly primitive species had defeated the most advanced military force in the galaxy. The techniques were being analyzed and copied. The biological weapon had proven that alien technology could be turned against them, and that species integration systems were vulnerable to attacks that no one had previously considered possible. Admiral Kim received intelligence reports showing that several alien empires were developing their own biological weapons based on human designs. The galaxy was entering a new era of warfare. The psychological impact of the preserved heads was creating long-term trauma in Valdari society as the memory of their defeat spread through generations of their species. The biological networks that made them strong also made them vulnerable. Captain Lee documented the strategic implications of the human victory. Every alien species now knew that Earth possessed weapons and tactics that could challenge even the most advanced civilizations. Dr. Han continued her research into biological warfare while also studying samples from other alien species that had been provided by new allies. The humans were building a library of weapons that could target any potential enemy to the Valdari homeworld. Experienced riots as the news of their defeat reached the general population. The empire that had seemed invincible was now viewed as vulnerable and their authority was being questioned. Commander Park trained her forces in new techniques based on lessons learned from the attack on the monitoring station. The humans were preparing for the larger conflict that would inevitably come. The galaxy had learned that threatening humanity was a fatal mistake, but it had also learned that humans were willing to share their knowledge with species that opposed the hegemony empire. Several alien civilizations that had been neutral in galactic politics began forming alliances with Earth as they realized that humans represented the best hope for stopping Valdari expansion. Preserved heads of the diplomatic mission continued to serve their purpose as psychological weapons, broadcasting the message of human capabilities to every alien species that encountered them. Admiral Kim knew that the victory over the Valdari diplomats was just the beginning. The galaxy was now aware that Earth was not another primitive world to be conquered, but a species that conquered back. The human response had changed everything, and the aliens were beginning to understand that they were dealing with a species that had turned warfare into an art form perfected over thousands of years of constant conflict. A message was spreading throughout the galaxy carried by traumatized alien survivors and preserved neural tissue that would continue broadcasting for decades to come. Never threaten humanity. 6 months after the Valdari retreat, Earth had become the most feared and respected planet in the galaxy. The story of how humans had responded to the alien ultimatum was told in every alien civilization as a warning about the dangers of underestimating seemingly primitive species. Admiral Kim stood in his new office overlooking the expanded United Earth Defense Council headquarters. The building had grown to accommodate representatives from dozens of alien species who had come to Earth seeking protection from the hegemony empire. The human colonies throughout the galaxy were not just surviving, they were thriving. No alien species dared to threaten human settlements after what had happened to the Valdari diplomatic mission. The psychological impact had created a protective barrier around all human worlds. Captain Lee had been promoted to Director of Galactic Intelligence and now coordinated with alien allies to gather information about potential threats. His network of informants included former Valdari soldiers who had deserted their posts rather than face humans in battle. Han continued her biological warfare research in facilities that were now the most advanced in the galaxy. She had volunteers from multiple alien species who provided genetic samples in exchange for protection from human biological weapons. Commander Park led the rapid response force, which had grown into a fleet of ships capable of reaching any human colony within days. Their reputation alone was enough to prevent most conflicts, but when action was required, they struck with devastating precision. The preserved heads of Overlord Vexton and his diplomatic mission were displayed in the Hall of Galactic Relations, where every alien visitor was required to view them before meeting with human officials. The message remained clear and terrifying. The Valdari Empire was collapsing from within as conquered species rebelled against their authority. The psychological trauma from the biological weapon continued to spread through their networks, making effective military command impossible. Fleet Commander Zephyros had been demoted to overseeing a remote mining station after his failure to prevent the human humiliation of the Valdari. His final report on the human incident was required reading in alien military academies. Several species that had been part of the hegemony withdrew entirely and formed independent governments. The 47 civilizations that had been conquered by the Valdari were no longer afraid to fight back. The biological weapon had proven more effective than any conventional military victory because it attacked the very foundations of Valdari society. Their biological integration, which had made them powerful, also made them vulnerable to psychological warfare. Admiral Kim received daily reports about alien ship movements as species throughout the galaxy repositioned themselves to avoid conflict with humans. The small blue planet had become the center of galactic politics. New alien ambassadors arrived at Earth every week seeking trade agreements, military alliances, and protection from hegemony forces. The humans had become the unofficial leaders of the anti-Valdari resistance. Captain Lee coordinated intelligence sharing with dozens of alien species who provided information about Valdari weaknesses and military positions. The galaxy was uniting against the Empire that had once seemed invincible. Dr. Han discovered that the biological weapon was still active in Valdari systems months after the initial attack. The pathogen had mutated and was now spreading traumatic memories through their entire species. The heads of the diplomatic mission continued broadcasting their message. Through alien biological networks, the neural tissue remained active and would continue to function for years, carrying the memory of human ruthlessness to future generations. Commander Park established training programs for alien military forces who wanted to learn human combat techniques. Species that had been conquered by the Valdari were eager to adopt the tactics that had proven so effective. The Valdari homeworld experienced its first successful rebellion in over a century as conquered species used human tactics to overthrow their occupiers. The Empire was fragmenting as fear replaced respect. Admiral Kim knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The balance of power had shifted permanently, and humans were now recognized as a major force in galactic politics. Psychological impact of the preserved heads extended far beyond the Valdari Empire. Every alien species now understood that humans were capable of unprecedented ruthlessness when their survival was threatened. Earth had become a sanctuary for species fleeing Valdari. Oppression and human protection was considered the most valuable commodity in the galaxy. The planet that had once been isolated was now the center of galactic civilization. Captain Lee documented the strategic changes that were occurring throughout the galaxy as alien civilizations adapted to the new reality that humans could not be conquered through traditional means. Dr. Han expanded her research to include psychological warfare techniques that could be used against other potential threats. The biological weapon had opened new possibilities for conflict that no one had previously considered. The Valdari military was experiencing mass desertions as soldiers refused to serve in units that might encounter human forces. The memory of what had happened to the diplomatic mission was too traumatic for many to bear. Commander Park received requests from alien governments who wanted human military advisors to help them develop defenses against hegemony expansion. The expertise that had defeated the Valdari was in high demand. The galaxy was learning that humanity represented something completely new in galactic politics, a species that combined advanced technology with the willingness to use any means necessary to defend their freedom. Admiral Kim stood before the Galactic Council that had formed around Earth and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. We did not choose to become warriors, but we will not hesitate to destroy anyone who threatens our independence. The preserved heads of Overlord Vexthan and his officials watched from their display cases as alien representatives pledged their support for the human-led resistance. Their sacrifice had become the foundation of a new galactic order. The message that had begun with a simple threat to Earth had evolved into something far more significant. The galaxy now knew that some species do not surrender, do not submit, and do not forgive. Humanity had achieved the impossible by forcing the most powerful empire in the galaxy to retreat through pure intimidation and psychological warfare. The small blue planet had become the most dangerous world in known space. The heads continued their eternal BROADCAST, carrying the warning that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Never threaten humanity. We don't forgive, we don't forget, and we don't lose.